needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing. There's just too little love.
Thank you all for joining us. I'm Grace Robinson. I'm the Director of Life Enrichment Options, and we're meeting today to celebrate Mother's Day. Normally, our organization hosts a Mother's Day brunch with Swedish Hospital in Issaquah, but because of the pandemic, we've had to cancel the last couple of years. And so we decided to put together this conversation to try to create some positive energy and some food for thought for the moms out there instead of our regular food for brunch. And we hope to get back to the brunches as soon as we can. Joining us today is Congresswoman Maria Schrier, Mary Najugna, who is one of our care providers here at Leo. She runs the Ann House. Chona is the care provider for the Leo Rose House. And we hope to also be joined by Mayor Mary Lou Pauly of Issaquah and Claire, who runs the Nancy House at Leo organization as well. So thank you guys for joining us. Our first topic is to discuss the enormous number of women who have had to drop out of the workforce during this pandemic. I believe the number, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe is about 2 million women, significantly, disproportionately more than the men who were forced out of the workforce in the pandemic. So my first question was to Representative Schrier, if you know of what is being done behind the scenes to help other women get back on track with their careers and get back to the work we love.
Of course. This has been what we refer to it as a she session because of the disproportionate impact on women. And when you look at the unemployment rolls, it's not that different between men and women in terms of who's applied for unemployment, meaning they lost their jobs. The difference is that with women, there's 2 million more. So in addition to the ones who lost their jobs, there are 2 million more who pulled themselves out of the workforce because kids were home from school and they had additional responsibilities, caretaking either for their children or for an older generation. And so they've really stepped away from the workforce, which can have lasting effects when you think about promotions, Social Security benefits, and everything else down the line. And so one of the most important things to help women, all people really, is to get everybody vaccinated, which we did in the rescue plan. We have funding for that. That will get us back towards normalcy, getting our schools open safely to have our children back in school. That is the largest childcare provider in the country. That will allow women to get back regularly into their jobs. So having children physically in school full time will make a world of difference. And then of course, the next step is after rescue and getting back to, to normal is how do we build back better? And that's when President Biden's American Jobs Plan really comes into play, because we have people who have lost jobs and jobs that may never come back. And this is in many ways the perfect time to really just boomerang our economy and have things just take off with new job training, apprenticeships, and new types of jobs that lead to kind of the infrastructure and the economy of the future.
And one of the fun stories for us that came out of the pandemic was the just ingenious ways that the care providers at Life Enrichment Options worked so hard around the clock in December and January to get vaccines for all of the developmentally disabled adults living in our houses. So just shout out to you guys. You did such a great job, and I was so impressed with all 4 of you.
Thank you.
My next question was actually for the care providers on the call. Schools closed and we were all left to manage our childcare without that support. And you also live in the homes where you work. So you're in the house the whole pandemic with your children and your residents that need care as well. What did you do? How did you make it? Just amazing.
I'll go first. Hi, everyone there. I have 2 kids, a 5-year-old and a 11-year-old, plus the 4 residents. And it was new for everybody, so we kind of figured out what to do we just had to be creative. But as mothers, it was really hard for us, especially having to become a teacher overnight. Helping my child with homework, and then also tending to the needs of the residents. It was challenging, but somehow it kind of brought us together as a family, and as a bigger family with the parents of the residents. They kind of stepped in and became companions and just worked through so many challenges together, like finding the vaccine. And I would call them with, say, for example, when we got wind of how we can have them vaccinated before Christmas, they were all going away for the whole week, but somehow they all came together and got permissions and rushed to get the vaccine. So we sort of, the dynamics changed, and we sort of just found ways to make things work somehow. I can't explain how, but it worked. It was resilience from everybody, from the residents, from the people around us, and we just figured it out. We just kind of walked through it day by day, and formed such a bond that I feel would have not been formed if we were not in this pandemic, to be honest. It brought us together. Everybody kind of understood each other, that we were all in this together. So it was resilience, I would say, that pulled us through it.
Absolutely. That's a really good point, that this devoted time we've had with our families, as difficult as it was, this is an opportunity that many people never get, to be able to spend this much time with their children. Chona, how did you manage? I know you have some younger children as well.
Yeah, my name is Chona Gascon, and I totally agree with Claire. For me, I do not see it as a crisis, but instead a challenges. For me, as a business owner, challenges are part of it. And I always turn challenges as an opportunity. This pandemic brought so many opportunities for me to become a creative in handling my clients, providing them extra care, activities, more time, making sure they are healthy and safe against virus. We love to talk and laugh and eat together. Yeah, thank you.
You did a wonderful job. Mary, I think your children were older, so they were able to participate a little more.
Yeah, my kids took a big part in this, because the first few weeks, it was so challenging because all my boys, most of them went to work. So
that's your residents?
Yes, the residents, they had to now stop working, and now you have to convince them why we are not working. They could not understand what was COVID. So with the help of the parents and their job coaches, now what we did, like for example, on Mondays, the boys that would go to work, the job coach will call in the morning and explain to them, this is what is happening. We have to hold on and wait until things got back to normal. And then the parents were really, when it came to a place that I had to put a lockdown and they could not go for the weekend off, I think the whole of last year, they did not go home.
Yeah.
So I stayed with them indoors. Now the challenge was, how do you keep them busy? The same pace, it's just me and my kids, the same pace, morning and evening. So we came up with this thing that we'll take walks. We'll walk down the street every other day. And one time, one of the boys was like, no, I need to go home. So when we went down the street, and he knew the way to his mom's house. So we had to stop that now.
Oh, he's taking off.
Yeah, he was taking off. And then we have to come on another plan. So I'd put them in the car and we go to the park. So we pack lunch and go there, take a few hours and then come back. So with time, and then the parents now would come and just over the window and wave and drop us stuff on the windows or the door and the driveway. So with time, all of us now, we were like, now this is the norm. We have to live with it. So when we got the vaccine, they were able to go home. So that is how we were able to cope up.
That was a happy day for us.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So speaking of small businesses and just running these businesses from home, I've been reading about the dramatic increase in the number of people that are applying for business licenses for the first time this year. And I would imagine that a lot of that is being driven by women trying to find creative ways to make money for their children, make money to put food on the table during the pandemic. So to Mayor Pauly and Representative Schrier, could you tell us more about the women in entrepreneurship in our area and maybe any resources that you're aware of for women who are starting businesses this year?
I think it is fascinating and actually a move in a positive direction that women are trying to find ways to combine work and taking care of the family and childcare in a way that provides them more flexibility. When I first moved here, I was thinking of starting a consulting employment business for women to help them find ways to be able to work from their house, but be able to get their kids off to school and be there at the end of the day. I think there's a lot of people who could contribute who just haven't had the opportunity with the way our systems are structured right now. And especially if you have children that go to different daycares or different after school programs. So I'm hopeful that this might be one of the shiny bright spots. There are many that will come out of the pandemic, is that we're being way more creative and way more flexible in the way we're approaching work. So through the city of Issaquah, we have an economic development program and an economic development manager and assistant. And they will work specifically with small business owners who are trying to explore ideas of where's the need in the market, possibilities for setting something up at home, availability of small business administration, funding, and all that. Anything to do, because I don't think we're going to go back to the way we used to work. I think we're going to have more options going forward, but there's a lot of mothers staying at home with their kids, being wonderful parents who also deserve some opportunity to be able to challenge themselves with a career at the same time without having to choose. So I'm hopeful this is going to be better.
Yeah, Representative Schrier.
And I would agree that the ability to work from home has opened a door in many ways to different options for moms who would like to also have a foot in the workforce and not have to choose between being a mom and working. I also think that we've seen tremendous creativity and ingenuity, which I expect from women. Whether that is somebody who owns a restaurant, turning that into a catering business, or meals that you can take home to have for dinner with your family kind of business, or making masks and selling them online. We've seen that creativity and grit that women will turn to in times of need. I think, where do we go from here? Well, if you are a new business owner and you just happen to get into your business the wrong year, then please know that there are PPP loans and EIDL loans, and that my office can help you with that, and the Small Business Administration can help you with that. And please also know that your local chambers of commerce are there to help new businesses get a foothold. So the resources are there. My office is happy to help, and I am just in awe of the creativity that I have seen out there with how families have just kind of scrapped things together to make things work.
Grace, if I could add one more point to the Congresswoman as well. The federal government has really put together some amazing opportunities, and PPP, that Paycheck Protection Program, is astounding if you're already established. Our city council actually allotted a portion of the recent grant funding for businesses for small brick and mortar businesses, recognizing that it may be harder for women working at home to know where to get funding. I'm hoping, as our city, thank you, Congresswoman, is going to be getting $8.6 million in new revenues to rebound out of this pandemic, this economic slowdown. I'm hoping that we are again going to invest, and that we will be looking again at those small brick and mortars, because I do believe that is an opportunity to get many, many women who had to leave the workforce to be able to come back better in a way that is more satisfying for them, both as a mother and as a business person.
That's really fantastic news. To the care providers on the call, do you have any practical advice? You're all small business owners yourselves. Some of you own more than one adult family home. Do you have any advice to other women who are starting out as entrepreneurs?
Just take the first step. Believe in yourself, and it doesn't hurt to try.
Mary, how about you?
I think just as Claire has said, I have 3 homes now. It's been challenging to get the caregivers, but once we got into the system, now we got the licenses, and now we have the providers, the caregivers that are on the house. Now we have to come up with a plan that, because of the COVID, they could not get. We had to have 2 on the floor every time, so that way they could not leave the house because of, some were using the bus, others were using the Uber. So we had to come up with a plan that they are living with us.
Wow.
Yes, so that's how we were able to contain the virus, and we were able to work as a team. So I had to drive, me, my husband, we were now on the road, making sure there's food in the house, there's all the supplies in the house. So that was kind of challenging, but it's gone real well so far. We have no complaints.
You just had to get the system together and then just keep things organized.
Yes.
And Shona, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, for the new entrepreneurs, I would say every beginner has faced many challenges. Embrace it positively. Be ready for the whatever may happen. Remember that life is beautiful, but most of the time life is difficult. We made our own choices, so whatever path we take, we must always be ready, and we must always be prepared for whatever life may throw at us. If you fall, stand again. If you fail again, stand all over again.
Flexibility, resilience. That's really
Grace,
beautiful.
if I may add, I think women are very resilient in so many ways. And I think most women run business actually very successful. We don't give up that easy. We just dust up and move on. So I would say just go in and start up and,
takes a lot more than a global pandemic to slow us down.
Yes, take a chance, right, right.
That's fantastic. So if you don't mind, I'm going to skip forward a question because I know Claire has to run to meet her daughter at the bus soon. That's mom life. But
Actually,
I really
need to pick one and then pick the other.
Okay. Do you have a few more minutes?
On the call on the phone. I will continue with the call on the phone if you don't mind.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to really make sure that I got your perspective because I know we've had some conversations about this and you've got you're so articulate. Regarding the social crisis we all just went through, anybody that's lived through 2020 in the United States is going to remember this wasn't just a medical crisis. We also had a crisis around racism, and it just blown us out of the water. I think so many people were disappointed to see that despite all the work that's been done, that we're still dealing with these kinds of problems today. And so I wanted to ask the care providers here, how did you handle that as mothers? We're here at our homes, we have no access to the normal, counselors at school and other people that would be supporting our kids normally, and counselors for ourselves. How did you handle that aspect of the challenges of 2020? And is there anything we can be doing to support you?
I'll go first because I have to. First of all, I have an 11-year-old who is kind of stuck in between the two, having been born here, raised in a different country and came back here. So she always asks me so many questions around race. It sometimes is mind-blowing because she's conflicted she has this school culture and then she has this home culture, and I have to tell her what's going on out there. So it's been very challenging, but I just try to educate her to her level about what is going on and what to expect, especially being a Black young immigrant, a Black young American born to immigrant parents like us. It's very hard to explain some things to her, but we've been able to sit her down and just, walk her through the process. We're still learning ourselves. And I also educate my residents because sometimes they'll make a comment here, a comment there, and she will ask me, what do they mean by that? So it's just a process that we're still in. And as much as we want to protect them, it's happening. So every day is a learning curve for them. And I just have to keep putting in some positive reinforcement and telling her, well, I don't know much about this, but this is what I can tell you. So I'm just, every day I educate her on a different topic around race, and just to a level of understanding. So far, so good, but we still have a lot of work to do. I mean, you may not feel it as a white woman, but as an immigrant, I see it every day, everywhere. Sometimes I just pull up the blinds and say, I won't focus on it, but sometimes it hurts. It hurts too much, but there's nothing you can do about it. What you can do is just educate that person who's next to you. And if they're willing to take it in, they will try and make a change and deal with that problem next time in a better way.
A great perspective, and we really appreciate all the hard work you're doing. Those are hard conversations to have. Chona, do you have a response to the question as well?
Yes, but I'm sorry, I'm just kind of weird because I'm kind of nervous, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, racism, yes, that is true. Even before racism is present, it makes me sad because it is pandemic time and racism is getting worse. I hope people would realize that instead of bullying and hating other people, we should just help and work hand in hand to overcome the situation. As a mother, I'm sometimes worried because I'm an Asian American, but I do not have any bad feeling with the people who are racist. I cannot blame them. This pandemic brought mental health issue and stress. Everyone wants to escape from this situation, and I understand them. But I also sympathize with Asian people who get bullied. As a mother, I always advise my kid how important unity is. Especially this time, I make sure that I check my children and make sure that I know who their friends are. Thank you.
That's a very compassionate response, Chona. And Mary?
The first episode when George Floyd was killed, my son had just started driving. So that morning, with the scene and the knee of that on that boy, my son came home, and for 50 minutes, he just stood there on the TV and said, "Mom, how safe am I?" That blew my mind. I had no words. You know, now what do I tell him? And now he can see it's him. He put himself in that situation. Mary, Mommy, supposing it was me, what would I have done? I said, so we have to sit down with the dad and even my daughter and tell them, if you are pulled aside, just put your arms on the steering and don't walk out. Just stay calm and do what it needs to do. So it's been such a hard time. And so even when the case was going on last week, and then somebody else, another episode happened like that, they're like, until when, Mom, until when? So my mom called last year when these things were really hot and said, can you bring the kids home? Is it safe there? So it was like,
back to Kenya?
Scared. Yeah, they were scared. They were all scared. So sometimes we just go on the road and say, every morning you share a prayer to your kids, God just watch over my children. You never know who's outside there. So it's scary. It's scary, especially for Black boys, especially my son. My daughter I'm not so scared, although I'm scared, but for my son, I'm scared. I must accept that it's scary. You never know how it's going to turn out.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To Representative Schrier and Mayor Pauly, you're both women in the public eye that have spoken out about equality under the law for people of all races. I'm curious how your experiences as mothers have influenced your approach to this, and do you have any response to what the care providers just shared?
Yeah, I feel nauseous. I mean, I'm an immigrant to this country too, and I'm a white woman in government. And the stories that I've been hearing over the last year, they just bring me to tears. I raised 2 white children here. They're 31 and 34. I remember how scared I was when my daughter told me that she was gay, because I had assumed as a mother, there's people out there who for no reason may harm you. But I had zero understanding of the history of Blacks in America and Asians in America. And since the death of George Floyd, and not having gone to school here myself, been doing so much reading on this issue, trying to understand the differences. My town that I live in is a predominantly white suburb of Seattle. I don't believe there was redlining here, but I'm not 100% sure there wasn't. What I'm reading now in the history books from the 1600s and the 1700s and the 1800s, and how the laws that came with slavery and after slavery, the failure of Reformation in the South, I feel like I've spent a year reading and being absolutely shocked, because it's not my experience. I came here in 1993. And these are not the things my kids learned in school. They were 4 and 7 when they came. And so the more I read and ask them questions, they're like, no, they don't teach that in school. No, they don't teach that in school. So it's been the most upsetting thing that I think I have lived through since in my 28 years here. And that's not to say the significant events of 9/11 and the significant events of the Oklahoma bombing also weren't extremely traumatizing. But reading the history of how we ended up to where we are today, and what is built into our system, has been the most disturbing thing I've learned since I've been here. So at a government level, we are trying, not as white politicians and white female politicians, to solve the problem. We're trying to better understand what methods we should be using to address some of these concerns, because they truly are systemic. They're built into the way we provide government service. They're built into just our the country's approach in general to all residents, all citizens are not equal. It's in almost everything. So, you know, at one point it's the worst of times to be in government. At one point it's the best of times to be in government. I am more hopeful now that the horrible picture that we're looking at in the mirror has gotten enough attention that some significant, impactful, long-lasting change can be made.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. I would really echo a lot of those sentiments, that there's a real sickness in this country, and most of America did not come to terms with this until it was captured on video for all to see. And even then, it seems like there are still people out there who don't seem to acknowledge that it's like there are two Americas. And Mary, your story told it all. You know, that you need to teach your children that if they get pulled over by the police, they need to pull over, turn on the lights, probably open the glove box, put their phone on speakerphone, put their hands on the wheel, and be as respectful as a person could possibly be. And you have to have that conversation with your kids because they are Black. What did my parents teach me about getting pulled over? Don't break the law so you don't get pulled over. And if you do, just pull over. Like there was never even a discussion. And I think that really says it all about the two Americas that we live in, and that much of America is just coming to see. And this last several years seems like the hatred and division in our communities has just been on steroids. Attacks on the Asian American community, very much rooted in rhetoric around coronavirus. And so we are seeing hate crimes there. And this is a real sickness that needs to be discussed. It needs to be discussed in schools, and it needs to be rooted out. And, you know, what can we do from a policy standpoint? I mean, these are policies. Much of this needs to happen in our culture, in our homes, in our schools. But there are things that government can do. We just passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. At least let's do some concrete things to make it less likely that a traffic stop will become a lethal stop. We just passed a child tax credit that is meant to give families who are struggling. Many of those families are people of color because of systemic racism that has kept them down and in lower paying jobs, that will give them a lifeline, a check for up to $300 per child per month, just to help make ends meet and give those children stability, less stress, and a better chance at life. And you just heard in the American Families Job, American Families Plan that President Biden introduced last night in his address to Congress is the addition of preschool in addition to K to 12, to have 3 and 4-year-olds be able to go to school. Because what we know is that every dollar spent on early childhood education pays off down the line sevenfold. And that if we invest early, we give every child, regardless of the family they're born into, the zip code, their family's income, you name it, we give them the chance to really reach their full potential. And so there's work to be done, but there are some of the bites that we're taking at the federal level while we all work individually to make sure that in our own families, we address our own biases.
Thank you.
I think that segues really nicely into discussing self-care in the pandemic. So to the moms, all of us, did you have to delay or go without any kind of medical appointments? I mean, I think when we hear self-care, we're thinking wine and bubble baths, and that's lovely. But during the pandemic, it's been so difficult to access mental health care and just regular dental checks and all the things that you need to do to take care of your physical, mental, emotional well-being. If you had to go without those kinds of services, can you share a little about it? And is there anything that we can be doing to support you now to get what you need while we're waiting for things to reopen? Chona, do you want to start?
Oh, yes, thank you. Sometimes you must delay, I must delay, yes, if it's not that really important. But no, I never go without self-care because I always thought about my client's welfare, which is part of my family. Being negligent will turn into the bigger problem. And I will not let it happen. I must make sure that everyone is safe at home. Speaking about the support, I believe that the government has given us all that support that we need. They are very helpful to us. They ensure that every citizen, not just us, are well taken care of. Thank you so much.
So what we did last year, because we could not walk in, we could not even get an appointment, so we had to hold until the beginning of this year. So we were able to get in and get the checkups, the doctor's appointment. So this year, we've been able to catch up on most of the things. Not everything, but at least we've been trying to get everything done that we were not able to do last year.
That's good. I think that's the same thing going on in my house, just so many appointments.
Absolutely.
Spend a lot of time on the phone scheduling.
Yes.
And to Mayor Pauly, and especially to Representative Schrier, I know you're also a pediatrician. What would you say to women who are struggling to access health care during the pandemic, or women who are dealing with special concerns such as pregnancy or chronic health conditions? Maybe they used to rely on insurance from an employer, and now they're suddenly finding that they're navigating these waters on their own for the first time.
Congresswoman, if you'd like to go first.
I saw you mute your own button, and I thought, oh, I bet she wants me to go first. For myself, I waited until I was vaccinated to have some of my own medical care. And I think what I have seen is that it is precisely in places where we go for our care where they are taking the most precautions, and that I do not want people to delay care. If you need to go to the emergency room, go to the emergency room. They have good ventilation. They are wearing masks. They are screening people, and they're wearing gloves, and you will be in good hands. And I would say that same thing about the dentist or your annual physical or getting your mammogram or your colonoscopy, that we know how this disease is spread. It is spread through aerosols, and if people are masked and ventilation is good and all precautions are taken, then you should be safe getting your care. And I don't want women to delay things like mammograms and other screenings that will ultimately save lives. Same thing with family planning. And for those of you out there who are listening and are pregnant, make sure you get your vaccination, because pregnancy is an independent risk factor for having severe complications from COVID. And it is safe for you to get this vaccine, and it is safe for your fetus. So please get immunized and protect yourself and your family.
We're so fortunate to have a doctor as our Congresswoman during a pandemic. The message that has been coming out of Congresswoman Schrier's office throughout this entire pandemic has been super helpful for all those that live within her district and all the mayors who could echo on top of what she was saying. The amount of fear and anxiety in the community in the first 6 months was fairly astounding. The messaging was a little difficult to understand at the beginning of the pandemic, but you could see the effects of the anxiety in people's behavior to each other and their behavior to their neighbors. And while many people became supportive, others, their anxiety just spilled out. So I think as a mayor, being, feet on the ground right within your community, it was quite a distressing time. We actually, as staff, many of us that were directly working on the pandemic response got our first weekend off sometime in June. And then we realized, oh my goodness, it's Saturday and I don't have to be in meetings today. And that was shocking, but it was so unsettling to see your community members, families, children under so much anxiety. So I love what Congresswoman Schrier said about encouraging people to make sure they do their appointments. I agree, that's been my perception as well, is that they are some of the locations, hospitals, doctors' offices, and dentists that have the highest level of precautions and fabulous results in terms of preventing infection spread. But I'd also say, and I said it many times during it, show more kindness to everybody, those that you know, those in your family, those that you don't know, because there is still a lot of stress and anxiety over just still being in condition with so many unknowns. And so there have been lovely examples of kindness and gifts and surprises for those living in senior living, and it's been heartwarming to see that, but I still see a lot of anxiety too. So I think to get through the next few months, to get through the majority of the vaccinations, we still have to remember that it's still pretty raw and it's still pretty rough, and somebody who may not be acting particularly nice maybe just needs to have a nice word said to them. So personal self-care, I would say I probably didn't do as good as I should have. Just there was too much going on, but I am surrounded by, I have a lovely husband, fabulous kids, and a couple of best friends who constantly reminded me to walk away from the computer, start to eat better, start to get more exercise in. And now we are 14 months in and exercise is starting again. So it's just been hard. And so if people are struggling out there, don't worry about it. You're going to get back to it. It's one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, but it's going to help. Get outside, help your mental health. We're just coming into the best time of the year right now.
Yes, it's so nice to have the sunshine back. It was a long winter. It's so beautiful out now. So to end our conversation on a bright note, we've all been in lockdown for a very long time. The care providers have been in the Leo homes in fairly isolated circumstances this entire pandemic. We've had to find some really creative, sometimes very quirky ways of passing the time. And some of it's been just truly hilarious. I'm thinking TikTok pasta and Tiger King and all these wacky ways that people have found to keep ourselves occupied while we're in lockdown. So I'd love to hear something that brought you happiness while we were waiting out the pandemic. Mary, do you want to go first?
Yes. So what I did with my boys, because it was now getting a routine, now out of the norm that they had to go to work. Now it's me and them 24 hours. So I came up with these African beats. And I'll put it on the YouTube and they'll dance and dance and dance. And now it became a habit. Every afternoon after lunch, so we put the African beats and we dance our sweat off. So by the time they go to bed, they're tired. So I know that day is gone. Then my husband came up with a game. They would go put like cups all the way, the red cups around the yard. So we open the back gates. So the first person goes there and drops the other side. Everybody goes their way, like relay, all of us. Mm-hmm. So we do that every weekend. So that way it kept us, at least we had something to do. At least we have a big yard.
Yeah, you have a beautiful yard.
Yeah, so we were able to do that. That's something that has kept us. There was always some joy when you see the boys, they are participating. That kept us going.
dancing and fresh air. That's
Oh, yes,
wonderful.
yes.
Chona, how about you? What brought you a smile this last year?
What brought me happiness during this pandemic is I get the chance to spend more time, quality time with my family and with my resident, my second family, my client. Creating activity indoor, we play games, we watch movie together, we eat delicious meal every day. I get to discover more and more things that can be helpful with all of us. You know, life is difficult sometimes, but we must always look at the bright side. And by looking at it, we will be realize how beautiful it was. We just must appreciate and embrace the situation positively. Thank you.
Good nutrition, positivity. It's great. I think you're making me feel like a nerd because my house just turned into Animal Crossing and Among Us. We were all about video games. That was definitely how we spent most of our time during the pandemic. How about you, Mayor Pauly?
So I think this is no different than many others, but our children are grown and do not live with us. But my husband and I had 3 significant milestones during the pandemic. We both turned 60 and we celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary. And for our 60th birthdays, it was, nothing, Groundhog Day, just like every other day in the pandemic. But for our anniversary and for one of the 60th birthdays. But on my 60th birthday, my husband ordered from a local restaurant. We live in Old Town Issaquah. There are lots of good ones to choose from. But he picked one with a minstrel, a musician who could stand outside the window and play his instrument and sing. And all my neighbors could hear it too. And I think that was the funnest thing that we've done. COVID safe and very entertaining.
That's genius. I love seeing how different business owners have come up with creative ways of just really making the best of the situation. And to finish, Representative Schrier?
Well, mine is very simple, and happy birthdays and happy anniversary, Mayor Pauly. That sounds delightful. My life personally stayed quite busy, although much of my work shifted to home. But I have been able to be out and about with outdoor meetings with constituents, keeping busy. Now, the good part of this is that in the normal life of a member of Congress, Monday morning, we fly out to Washington, D.C., and Thursday night or Friday night, we come back and spend the weekends at home and then the next week it starts up again. The pandemic had me traveling a whole lot less. And so I had more time at home to cook with my family, have meals with my family, play board games, watch Ted Lasso, bake a pie, bake some cookies, and just sort of be together.
I love it. Those simple things, being with our families. And that's what we're really celebrating this Mother's Day. Really glad that you were all able to join us. And I'm wishing a happy, happy Mother's Day to everybody who's watching. Thank you so much, Representative Schrier and Mary Pauly, for taking the time to talk with us.
Of course. Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Happy Mother's Day to all of you, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Love, sweet love, no, not just for some, but for everyone.